Welcome to Facilitating a Gap Analysis. We appreciate your time and believe that this will be very beneficial as you engage in the school improvement process. As a result of our time together, you'll understand what a gap analysis is, why a gap analysis is so important in school improvement planning, how to conduct a gap analysis, and then what to do with the information from a gap analysis once you have it. So, what exactly is a gap analysis? Well, simply put, a gap analysis is an examination of your current performance so that you may identify the difference between your current state, which is where you are now, and your desired state, which is where you want to be. And in school improvement planning, it really narrows our focus to the areas where improvement is needed immediately. So again, a gap analysis is simply the examination of your current performance so that you may identify your current state, where you are now, and your desired state, which is where you want to be. It's important to remember that this narrows our focus to the areas where improvement is needed immediately. So to see where this fits in the continuous improvement process, look at the chart. In the tan area of the graphic, information or data is gathered in three areas. Any core elements that need additional attention. Now this is from section A in the template. Student achievement, overall and for specific groups. Now, if you've been identified as TSI, Targeted Support and Improvement, under ESSA, it is required that the student groups which are underperforming and for which you've been identified, that data is analyzed. And then lastly, current goals. So the examination of data in these three areas is important and actually is in section B of the template. Gap analysis process, which follows the study of data, helps us do then two things: identify and prioritize our needs. The first part of gap analysis process, shown here in a shade of pink, is to analyze the data from those three areas and determine where improvement is needed immediately. Now, this is done by comparing where we are, again, with where we want to be. So after we identify gaps, we prioritize them. And that's shown here in sort of the cream color boxes on the chart. These prioritized gaps will be the focus of our root cause analysis. So again, the gap analysis identifies and prioritizes our needs. Let's talk about some important considerations regarding desired states and current states. The desired state is where we want to be. School leaders have to be very clear and focused on their desired state. It certainly can't look like these arrows. Instead, it has to be specific. It should align with our school's vision and be supported by the mission. It may pertain to current goals, but it must be clearly understood by all. And in our current state, we have to be honest. This is where we are right now. This is an objective reflection based on real data. In essence, it's like a look in the mirror to see what's really there. It may be that students' math proficiency is only 25% according to the last iLearn results. But where we are does not have to define who we are. This can be the catalyst to unleash that potential that exists among the people in our school to attain that desired state. So remember, the current state is based on an objective examination of data. We have to reflect on where we are at this time. Let's see how the template guides us through the process then. In the template, this example explains how to conduct gap analysis and complete the gap analysis chart. This example is very beneficial as you proceed through section C, so I hope you'll use it. In the example, the school improvement team committee member says, during our discussion about core elements, we felt student misbehavior has gotten worse. And if that's the case, it's counter to what we believe. We are committed to providing all students with a safe and disciplined learning environment. Now, you'll note that she goes on to say that they didn't base their findings on just feelings. They gathered data to see if they were right. It's also important to note here that in the example, a safe and disciplined environment, what is written is aspirational. It does not contain quantitative data. When we write our desired performance, we will want to make it operational as well as aspirational. In other words, it's really where we want to be, but it also really needs to contain quantitative data so that when we make our comparison, There'll be a basis of comparison based on quantitative data. So they wrote what they believe about student conduct, their desired state, in the first column. And because it's not a goal at the time, they put no in the second column. And then she went on to say, we collect discipline data and summarize our findings in the third column. So if we look at the third column, we see that they concisely summarized their actual performance-based data. This is where they are. This is their current state. They wrote, in-school suspensions increased 15% over the last 2 years. Suspensions and expulsions increased 8% and 4% respectively. According to a survey, 45% of students do not feel safe at school. So then next they compared where they are, their current state in column 3, with what they believe or their desired state in column 1. In column 4, then they summarized their feelings, because based on that comparison, they saw that a gap certainly does exist between their desired and their current state. They wrote, we're committed to a learning environment that ensures safety and well-being for all. Data indicates that students do not feel safe and that misbehavior resulting in suspensions and expulsions has increased. So they noted that a gap certainly does exist in the next column, and you can see that where the X is on the chart. And after comparing it to other gaps, they listed this as their top priority. So in the last column, schools prioritize their gaps based on where improvement is needed immediately. So I hope this example will provide guidance as you go through the template. In section C, this chart is provided, and this is where the data that was used in the example is put for your actual school. You've probably seen this chart before in previous sessions, but this chart does provide limited space in cells, so you have to be concise, certainly meaningful and accurate in your data reporting, but cell space is limited, so it has to be concise. Now it's your turn. If you'd like to complete this exercise, you can pause after I give the instructions. To try this exercise, think of an area where improvement is needed immediately. Certainly not something large, such as a school improvement goal that you currently have, but something relatively small, such as lunchroom or recess, or your current schedule that needs to be changed. Using a sheet of paper that you might have, write that problem at the top of the page, and then draw 3 lines to show 3 different columns. In one, you want to define your desired state, and you want to be specific so that it's clearly understood. Define your current state for this particular problem. You may not have data in this case, but you certainly want to be objective and honest. And then contrast your desired state and your current state. Is there a gap? If so, how large? And what data, or in this case, what feelings do you have to support this? If you'd like to try that, you may pause now. If you conducted that exercise, I hope it gave you an idea as to what a gap analysis feels like and looks like. So based on the example, again, if you did that exercise, what would you write in the particular columns on this chart? Again, if you've conducted that exercise and you'd like to think about that, pause and do that now. So how do we use the information we get from a gap analysis? Well, it poses the problem statement for root cause analysis and is the basis for our goals. For example, the school that we used in the sample may want to conduct 2 root cause analysis for the problem. One to find out why suspensions and expulsions have increased, and one to find out why students don't feel safe at school. So looking at this chart, schools that conduct the gap analysis in column 4 on the previous chart, which is where their gap is, will transfer that information to the left side of this chart. These become the problem statements. These problem statements then do 2 things. To the right, they pose the problem statement for the root cause analysis that will be conducted. And then the arrow showing going downward, they become the basis of our goals. So again, this is where gap analysis fits with root cause analysis. It poses the problem for root cause analysis statement and becomes the basis for our goals. So a gap analysis allows us to identify and prioritize areas where improvement is needed immediately. Gap analysis is the process of assessing the difference between the current state and desired state. It requires an examination of data and an honest reflection, objective reflection of our current performance. And it leads us to focus on critical issues and set clear goals for improvement. Thank you for joining me in this presentation of facilitating a gap analysis. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at jpurcell@doe.in.gov. Thank you again.